to this meeting of the Inverclyde Council Policy Resources Committee. This meeting is being held remotely and also in person. It will be filmed and recorded for live and subsequent broadcast available to the Council's website. Council is the data controller under the General Data Protection Regulations and the Data Protection Act 2018. We broadcast and record council meetings to fulfil our public task and obligation to enable members of the public to observe the democratic process. Data collected during the process will be retained in accordance with the Council's published policies available through the Council's website. Members of the Council are reminded that they should follow the Council's established committee's protocol, including around the use of the chat facility, and their comments made in the chat facility are listened to all participants in the meeting, which may include members of the public who also received and invest in the meeting. Before we go into the business, colleagues, I think everyone will know former colleague and friend, ex-Councillor Jim McGowan passed away on Sunday, very sadly and suddenly, and I think it's only right that we do record that fact in a minute and offer our condolences to Jim's wife Sylvia and family. There will be an opportunity before coming full council for us, obviously, to formally recognise Jim's contribution to the council and show our support for the family. But I think it is important, given this is the first meeting that Jim passed away, that we do record in the minutes that we do offer our condolences to Sylvia and the family. Okay, so item 1 is apologies, substitutions and declarations of interest. Colin?
Convener, we have an apology from Councillor Law to be substituted by Councillor Crowther. Move to a roll call. Can the following councillors please indicate if they're present at the meeting? Councillor Armstrong.
Present in the chamber.
Councillor Crowther.
Present in chamber.
Councillor Curley.
Present in chamber.
Councillor McCluskey.
Present remotely.
Councillor McKay.
Present in chamber.
Councillor McCormick. Councillor McGuire.
Present remotely.
Councillor McVeigh.
In chamber.
Councillor Moran.
In the chamber.
Councillor Robertson.
Present in the chamber.
Councillor Wilson.
Present in the chamber.
Are there any declarations of interest? Councillor McCormick. Yeah.
Okay, no declarations back there. Okay. Right, that takes us on to item 2, revenue budget return 2022. Okay, maybe I have to put my microphone on for you hear me, is that correct? Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Revenue budget outturn 2022-23, Angela.
Thank you, convener. Yes, this is a revenue outturn report for 22-23 based on the service committees. They are based on the unaudited figures for 22-23, so they are subject to change depending on the outturn of the audit. There is a couple of things I'd probably highlight at this point. More detailed reports will come to each of the service committees for the outturns, and they will be part of the 23-24 revenue outturn reports as we do on a normal basis. The figures do exclude the Health and Social Care Partnership this time. So as any outturn, underspend or overspend will be retained by the IJB for those ones. I'd like to point out in section 1.3 of the report, we are reporting a 1.58 million underspend for the period. A little bit more detail has been included in section 1.3. It's also included in Appendix 1 of the report for all variances over 50,000. And also we've taken a sample of those material variances and included a bit more detail in Appendix 2. Those underspends or overspends have actually been considered as part of the 23-24 budget process, and they will be considered as part of the 24-26 as well if there's any additional variances there. And also just to point out, the movement from the period 11 report is explained in section 1.4 of the report, and at section 3.4 of the report, we're actually showing what our percentage variance is against budgets as well as performance for the last 5 years. I'm happy to take any questions if I can.
Okay, thank you, Angela. Question from Councillor McCluskey, Martin.
Thanks, convener. I'd just like to take us to like page 4, the revenue budget projected position at period 11, and I was just wondering if we could confirm that the PCN and parking income shortfall of £110,000. Just if we could confirm, does that mean that we brought in £110,000 less than anticipated from parking income? And if that's the case, obviously we spent quite a lot of time last year thinking about the correct level of parking charge, but it seems that the £3 charge that was introduced hasn't raised the amount of money we hoped it would. And just speaking from our own ward here for a moment, has also led to quite a significant amount of displacement out of car parks onto surrounding roads. So I'm just wondering, in light of both the kind of under usage of the car parks and the shortfall in the budget, how we might look to take this forward and how we might look to kind of remedy this position. Thanks.
Okay, I'll bring Angela in first and then I'll bring Stuart in. Angela, just in terms of that, I suppose the initial question, and then Stuart about the implications.
Yes, convener, I can confirm that is an under recovery based on the set budget for 22-23.
Okay, thanks. Stuart.
Convener, through you. In terms of the components, parking income was £83,000 down and PCN income was £28,000 down, but also recognising that for the first 6 months of that financial year, there were contributions towards the income stream from COVID monies. Councillor McCluskey's comments are correct, apart from one thing, and that is that we haven't introduced the £3 charge yet. But what it is our intention to do is to bring a report to the Environment Regeneration Committee after this cycle, which sets out the underspend or under recovery in this financial year, as well as proposals as to what we're going to do about it.
Okay, Martin, happy with that?
Yeah, I'm happy with that. Apologies, when I said £3, I meant the existing charge, the £2 existing charge that was active in that year.
Okay, Elizabeth.
Thanks. So I've got a question regarding internal resources interest. Obviously, there's an recovery in terms of that, but we had an assumption built into the budget last year in terms of a figure for that, which has arguably worked. I'm just wondering what the plan would be, what the assumption would be for next year, what's likely to change, what do we think the markets are going to do or the rates are going to be like, and is this something that can benefit us as we look at the development of the budget, potentially a 2-year budget for the coming couple of years?
Okay, Angela, you want to do that?
Yes, convener. I can confirm that we did build into the budget a recurrent amount for the internal resources interest. I think it was £300,000. I know this figure's significantly more than that, but we also did build into the use of reserves over the next 3 years, I think up until 2026, the use of that over recovery of internal resources interest. So we have basically utilised that funding either through a revenue budget or the use of reserves in the next 3 years. I think our assumptions just now on the reason of why we have not built in any more than the 300,000 is the expectation that the rates will start to come down. But up until 25-26, I think we have utilised this funding as best as we can.
Okay, Angela.
Yes, thank you. Internal resources interest is a pretty complicated area, but in simple terms, when the budget was set for 22-23, interest rates were 0.5%. By the end of the year, we were over 4%, and obviously at the moment they're 5.25%, with every indication it could go up to 5.5%. But as Angela's indicated, this is a transitory, all indications are. So this is a transitory situation. So we wouldn't want to set our budget on receiving this level of internal resources interest in the medium term. because I'd end up bringing a 7-figure budget pressure back to you in a year or so's time. So the way, as Angela described it, that we dealt with this through the March 23 budget was to estimate what the extra bound income would be over the next 3 years, and we estimated £3.5 million, and we put that in the earmarked reserve, and members have taken decisions to spend that. So from my perspective, I'm hoping that the estimates I made of interest rates over the next 2 to 3 years come out, otherwise there'll be a shortage in our reserves. Our budget for 23-24 is £500,000. So we won't over-recover by as much this year, and we will review as part of the budget process whether we can increase that figure, because interest rates are probably, I have to say, a bit stickier than we thought when the budget was set. So as I say, it's a complicated area, it's a big area, there is an equal and opposite impact in our loans charges, so it's not a net gain, really, it impacts on the loans charges as well, but it is something that officers will keep an eye on throughout the preparation of the 24-26 budget.
Okay, thanks. Would you like to back then?
No, I was, but I'm okay.
Okay, Tom.
Thanks, Convener. On the report, under non-pay contingencies, it talks about utility costs being a key budget risk. Do we have any outlook how they're going to go over the next couple of years?
Okay. Well,
Well, this is one where I can probably start and hand over to Angela, that does all the hard work on the utilities. But obviously, when again, you've got to remember when the budget was set, and this included contributions to implied later today, utility costs were probably at their peak. And since then, you've probably noticed yourselves that there's an indication utility costs are dropping a bit. They're still significantly higher than they were 2 years ago, but they are dropping a bit. So again, this is one of the key budget areas that we will keep an eye on through the 24-26 budget, and we get regular updates from Procurement Scotland in terms of how costs are going. But it's okay, Convener, I'm going to pass over to Angela. Of course, that's Angela.
Thank you, Convener. Yes, as Alan said, this is one area that is fluctuating quite considerably between month on month for gas and electricity. We had a pretty good picture of what the prices were going to be when we set the budget, and we did allow for that during that process. But since then, what we are finding is gas is going down quite significantly, but electricity is climbing, so they're almost offsetting each other. But as far as trying to predict what those prices are, it's almost impossible because they are changing quite significantly. As I said, Alan said that we do get a price risk index guidance sent to us maybe every month or every second month, and we are keeping on top of that and reviewing it each time and updating what that actually means to the pressure. At this point, for 23-24, it looks like we are still within what we projected at the start of the year. It's just the mix of it that has changed quite dramatically between gas and electricity. I hope that helps.
Thank you.
okay, thanks, Angela.
Thanks, Convener. Looking ahead to agenda item 6 on HR, if we are reducing the vacancy gaps, do we expect that to produce lower underspends in the future? Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Councillor Armstrong's exactly right. I mean, that's why there wasn't a 7-figure increase in turnover factored into the budget, because again, a bit like in interest rates, this is transitory, it's got to be transitory, and officers have brought reports here and I've got a commitment to bring further reports back about how to improve recruitment and retention, which will see turnover reduce over time.
Thank you.
But just to say that we could take a deliberate decision to slow the filling of vacancies to save money, but accept that that will consequences in service delivery. So the issue we're talking about is where there's no been a deliberate decision. It's a consequence of issues within the system. But we could say, no, we need to try and balance the budget. One way we're going to do that is set a higher turnover target and accept that the delays and filling posts will have an impact on service delivery for the public. Well, I'm suggesting that. Okay, any other questions, colleagues? No, okay, I'll have to take your recommendation. Okay, that takes us on to item 3, capital programme outcome 2023. Alan?
Thank you. This report again is a regular report to the audit of our committee and highlights on the outturn of the capital programme for the preceding year. It highlights the level of slippage in 22-23 against approved budgets, and the appendices give greater detail regarding the level of slippage compared to previous years, the main movements by project, and the classification of slippage over a number of classification types, and how the level of slippage was reported to committee throughout the year. Paragraph 3.7 flags of action taken by officers to improve the position in 2024 and beyond, and myself and Stuart are happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thanks for that, Alan. Any questions from members? No, we're happy to agree the recommendation.
Agrees.
Then please to go to item 4, Central Management and Report 2023. Alan?
Thank you. This annual report will require to be remitted to the full council for approval, and again has been impacted by the early discussions about the quite big changes in interest rates after a couple of decades of relatively stable interest rates. Overall debt reduced by around £7 million in 22-23 to 3.6, with the council being under borrowed by 44 million at the 31st of March 2023. Officers stayed with all strategy limits as set out in 3.10, and the significant increase in interest rates occurred during 22-23, and this has impacted on how we did against investment targets, etc. And this will continue throughout 2024 and we suspect into 24-25, and we'll reflect in the 23-24 strategy. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thanks, Alan. Any questions from members? No, happy to agree the recommendation.
Agreed.
Thank you, Mr. Host, necessary to read that. Okay, so we get to item 5, support for the map for the budget.
It's expensive.
Right, thank you, probably.
Build the headphone from the side, Alan.
Thank you, probably. This is the first substantive report on the next budget and seeks a number of decisions by committee around the period covered, council tax planning assumptions, CMT action regarding developing savings, and whether to fully passport £821,000 grant from the Scottish Government to the IJB to help with the 2024 pay award. The issues have been considered within the members' budget working group, and the group's recommendations are in section 4 of the report. The report also includes and attaches the Verity House agreement recently entered into between the Scottish Government and COSLA. Depending on the progress of discussions and the outcomes of this agreement may have a material impact on the forthcoming budget, and updates will be provided to this committee and also members in the members' budget working group. Finally, appendices 2 to 4 provide updates regarding the delivery difficulty programme and proposes the addition of several new projects, with the usual request to delegate the authority to the chief executive to undertake voluntary severance roles to inform proposals where appropriate on the understanding that no decision will be taken without the necessary report and consideration by the committee. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thanks, Alan. Councillor Lawson, you taking that one?
Yeah, thank you very much, convener. I had a very good briefing of this by my representative on the members' budget working group, and we have jointly come to certain conclusions. If I go to the recommendations at 2.3, budget consultation includes an assumed increase in council tax income of 5 million by 25-26. Then if I carry on in the paper to big page 35, at 4.4, the last sentence there on 4.4 indicates that it would be a 14% increase in council tax over 2 years. So the 5 million is adding up to 7% a year. That is causing us a bit of discomfort. We think it's too early to agree on a figure of this nature. We have the Scottish Government consultation on council tax bands, the 4 bands. I've already had meetings in my constituency with constituents. I was at Elvaston Court and Woodrow Court, which are retirement flats. They sell between 60 and 70,000 pounds. Half of them in there are going to be on a band D, which means that we get a 7.5% increase if the Scottish Green Government consultation goes through. So they get 7.5% extra from that, and then 7% from us possibly. And I think that is just on. I don't think so. I won't refer to the larger houses in the village, who will go from 22.5% to 29%, almost 30%. I don't think a 30% increase in council tax is in any way tolerable at this stage of the game. We also, so we don't know the outcome of that consultation, but it finishes in September, so we might know the result by Christmas, I would think. We're also waiting to hear about perhaps changes to the pension situation. There might be a rebate needed there, but we might not have to be spending 20% of each employee's wages on the pension, so we don't know the result of that yet. So really, in terms of my experience so far, I really think we're jumping the gun with the 5 million. I've also had several emails from constituents who read the article in the Greenock Telegraph and were really quite angry with me. Why am I allowing this to happen? So regardless of whether I allow it or not, I'm getting the blame anyway. So really, what I would like to do is put forward an amendment to the recommendations at 2.3, particularly the second bullet point, that we go to consultation includes an assumed increase in council tax income of 5 million by 25-26. I would like to change that 5 million to 3.6 million, which represents a 10% increase in council tax in 25 to 26. I think that's a more reasonable figure to go out to constituents. At the same time, in the background, we will have to consider what happens with the pensions and what happens with the Scottish Government consultation. So that's my name, Rita.
Thanks, Councillor. It is disappointing that you feel the need to make an amendment because the recommendations in the report are based on unanimous recommendations made by the members of the Budget Working Group, which does, as you say, include a representative from your group. So that is disappointing. I respect the right to do that. You referred to the briefing from your group colleague. I don't want to cast any instructions on it tomorrow with the briefing. It's maybe just to understand where the briefing is slightly down. But I think you are a bit confused really about where the 5 million figure comes from and the implication for the 5 million. But rather than me give my political view at this point down on right, I subject to explain where the 5 million figure comes from, would be perhaps a bit more delighted.
Oh, sorry, Novena.
Enlighten me.
Thank you. The £5 million figure is, as it says, an overall increase in council tax income. So that takes into account 3 factors. It takes into account the potential impact of the Scottish Government consultation, which I'm bringing a report back, consultation response back to the next committee for members to sign off on or to consider. And if what is in the consultation was agreed, depending on decisions taken further down the line, that would raise between 1.5 to 2.5 million and 5 million pounds. Okay, so the 5 million includes any changes to the banding weightings. Year on year, there are marginal increases in the council tax base. And what that means is there's house building going on in Inverclyde, and it tends to be higher banded houses that are built, and those that follow or demolished tend to be band A houses, and that's been the case for a number of years. So there's natural growth in the tax base. That's also part of the 5 million. And then what is left is the increase. So my sense is, subject to what happens to the Scottish Government consultation on the changes in the weightings, that over a 2-year period, you're looking at a potential council tax increase of between 7 and 10% to achieve the £5 million figure, which I think is in line with what you were potentially indicating, Councillor Wilson. You would be a different target. So it's just the council tax growth is everything. It's not about increasing the charges to band A to H houses in Inverclyde by 14%. Because a lot hinges on what happens with the national consultation on the bandings, which I say could raise half the sum that we're talking about.
I'd have to say I would be happy for you to refer any angry constituents to myself as a fellow Ward 1 councillor and the person who was politically quoted in the article in the Great Atelier. I think that the important thing to understand here is the £5 million is a planning assumption, okay, to inform principally the level of savings that we're asking officers to develop. And essentially, if we agree 5 million, there's less savings that are developed. If we agree less than 5 million, potentially officers need to develop more savings. Now, unanimous view of the members' budget working group is 5 million is an appropriate figure. But that's a planning assumption. That doesn't mean to say that we're taking the decision on council tax today. We're not taking the decision on council tax. We need to find out basically what happens with this consultation. We need to see what sort of settlement we get from the Scottish Government, whether it's better or worse or the same as Alan is assuming in the national strategy. We need to look at the saving options which elected officers prepare for elected members. We need to see what comes out of potentially the changes to the pension scheme, etc. And that's why the suggestion is we're going to delay the consultation until later in the financial year so that we're better informed. But ultimately, at the end of the day, it will be, as happened in March this year, it will be for the elected members to decide the level of Band D council tax that we set. And there's nothing in here that precludes anybody proposing the net effect of a proposal around Band D council tax is less than 5 million, or somebody proposing it is 5 million, somebody proposing it's more than 5 million. You can come forward at an appropriate juncture with a proposal to have a lower council tax increase than perhaps my group is prepared to recommend to the council. This is simply a bit of planning assumption. So I am disappointed that we aren't going to end up in the division today, because I thought we had got unanimous agreement through the member budget working group to bring these proposals forward to this committee, only to find obviously one of the groups has decided to change the line before the amendment. But that's democracy. Okay, any other member want to come in? No? Okay, right, so I'll move the recommendations in the report as we stand.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. So I just clarify then, we have a motion from Councillor Wilson moving the amendment, the recommendations in the report other than in 2.3, where the second bullet point is council tax income of 3.6 million, and also with consequential adjustments to 4.4 in the report as well, which is the relevance paragraph. And then the amendment from Councillor McCain moving the recommendation as set out in the officer report. Okay. So we'll just go to the vote then. So it's Councillor Wilson's motion or Councillor McCabe's amendment. Councillor Armstrong.
Amendment.
Councillor Crowther.
Amendment.
Councillor Curley.
Amendment.
Councillor McCabe.
Amendment.
Councillor McCluskey.
Amendment.
Councillor McCormick.
Amendment.
Councillor Maguire.
Amendment.
Councillor McVeigh.
Amendment.
Councillor Moran.
Amendment.
Councillor Robertson.
Amendment.
And Councillor Wilson. Motion. So the amendment is carried by 10 votes to 1.
Some things never change, councillor. Sorry? Some things never change. The reality is, irrespective of the view that we take, council tax, we've got very, very difficult decisions ahead. For us all, very difficult decisions ahead.
Could I just say that we will remain and we believe it's in the first, but we will stay on board with that. This isn't new, we're following out the members.
Okay. Right, thanks for that. Moving on to item 6, which is the review of human resources and organisational development. I think Ruth's going to speak to that report.
So this is the review of human resources and organisational development, and members are asked to note the findings and recommendations of the external review, and the recommendations of consideration were in paragraph 3.6. So we looked at technology and systems, transactional activities and processes, recruitment, appointment, policy and communications, resources and capacity, and also learning and development. The actions that we are going to take forward are outlined in paragraph 2.21, and we're asking for the committee to agree to the inclusion of the relevant actions in the committee delivery improvement plan. And then we'll just have a briefing on it. I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I mean, we did have a very comprehensive briefing and got any elected members ask questions on this particular matter. So, Elizabeth?
Thanks, Kabira. Just first of all, thank you for the briefing. It was really, really helpful to just get the, to quote an Alanism, the meat and potties of everything that was that came out of the review. And also just thank you, because this does provide a level of clarity, a real level of clarity for a way forward that really does support our staff to, I think Morna said this in the briefing, that the staff in the service in particular want to realise the ambition for their service within this organisation, and I think this provides clarity to let them do that. I'm aware that there's a lot of detail in the action plans. The question that I've got is really about that ongoing monitoring of that, and given our interest in it and the locus that we have as elected members, what will be fed back to us in terms of ongoing monitoring at the most appropriate good level of detail that we can get.
So you can be, we will have a very detailed action plan that will have, as you can imagine, every action we're taking and broken down with timescales. What we're intending to do is bring a higher level action plan as part of the CDIP, but also happy to give any additional briefings as we've made progress. So our intention is to bring a higher level action plan back, as we would with any of the projects within the CDIP.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions from members? I mean, I think it is important that lessons are obviously learned from this. There's obviously a number of issues of real concern to us as elected members, and it's obviously important they are addressed as part of the action plan, and as a committee, as is indicated in 3.21, we will have an oversight through our committee delivery and improvement plan. But I think it's also important, linking to the last item of the agenda, we go forward and developing savings options, that we fully understand the implications of savings options, and there aren't any easy savings, and I know there was attendance in the past, and I'm as guilty probably as any other elected member to look at back office services to try and protect frontline services, but we can only cut back office services so far, as we've found, not just in HR, but found in other services, without there being real vectors in the system and real issues around resilience. And I do commend the staff for seeking to try and deliver a good service under very difficult circumstances. But as I said, importantly, we do learn those lessons. Okay, that can make the conclusions. Okay, that takes us on to item 7, digital modernisation programme update means money. You know that?
Great, thank you, convener. Yeah, Councillor, so just an update on the work of the Council's digital modernisation programme, looking at approval for the upgrade of the Verint customer service system, the associated funding from the earmarked reserve, and the grants of delegated authority to the Chief Executive to approve the use of funds from the earmarked reserve up to a level of 100,000. I'll take any questions on the report.
Okay, thanks, Ian. Any questions from members? Martin, Councillor McCluskey.
Thanks, convener, and thanks, Ian, for this report. I think it's a really good use of funds to, go through this digital modernisation programme. Just two questions. Firstly, on the new customer service system, I know this has been raised at this committee before, but in terms of channel shift, whether the new system will be capable of allowing us to take inquiries from people from other sources such as social media, Facebook, Twitter, which is quite frequently used by people to provide feedback to the council. And secondly, whether as part of this as well, you might be able to look at modernising the app, the council app, which, while it works on Android, has not worked on iPhone for a very long time, and whether that could be updated as part of our kind of customer-facing IT systems. Thanks very much.
Okay, thank you for you, convener. Yes, certainly. We put it in the report there, paragraph 4.5. We're excited as the possibilities of the upgrade, Councillor McCluskey, and one of the things that we would hope is that we will be able to tie into the council's social media accounts and be able to draw customer queries and comments through from that as well, to provide another way into the council, another way of the council responding continuously, as well as other ways that we could look to advance channel shift and through more ability for citizens to do online forms, tying in the different service areas. But the initial task would be getting the upgrade through, getting the staff trained, and then rolling things out on a proportionate basis. But yeah, we're excited by the possibilities. As regards the app, I'd probably defer to my learned colleague, Mr. McDonald, if I may, convener. Sure.
Thanks to you, convener. Yes, so the general plan will be to retire the app once the new system is in place, mainly because the new system will allow us to have a much more functional website that will allow us to do all the things we can do in the app and more. So things like maps, things like live action pictures can be uploaded directly into the system without the need for the app. So all of the functionality that's in the app just now will be on the new site, but we'll retire the actual app itself. As you said, it hasn't been particularly well developed or supported by the supplier for some time now.
Okay, time with that, Martin.
Yeah, thanks very much.
Okay, Natasha, Councillor Maguire.
Thank you, Chair. I was going to ask about the social media inclusion, and I was going to come in back to Alan McDonald and ask about the functionality of the app with the website, because actually I am on Android and I find it really useful and I recommend it to constituents that have Android as well. But as long as the website can do all that does, I'm completely happy with that. My question was around 4.7, around the ongoing annual revenue of £53,000. I just wondered, could you give us a flavour of what that would go towards? Just because I'm aware the upgrade itself is just under double that cost. So just wondering, with it being such a high in comparison to the one-off cost, what is it that we'll be paying for as part of the ongoing annual revenue here?
Well, I suppose, Councillor Maguire, that is at the moment we pay 47,000 on an ongoing annual basis. That's revenue cost, and it's going to go up slightly. We'd be thought that actually moving to a cloud option traditionally that'd be more expensive, so we were quite pleased with that pricing. But really, that would just be for the ongoing use of the system. And as you say, that there's a one-off cost there around the upgrade. But really, that's just what the license is and our ability to use the system going forward. That answers your question.
Yeah, that's really helpful to know. It's mainly because it's a cloud option and it's a license that we're paying for. That's really helpful. Thank you.
So the net cost of the effect of the upgrade in the new terms is 6,000. Yeah. Okay. Any other member? You seem poised to.
No, it's
just been very quiet. It's unusual. Okay, no other questions. Any recommendations? Yes, thank you. Right, moving on to item 8, records management policy, and Martin, do you want to give that, Martin?
Yes, thanks, convener. This agenda item is to seek PNR's approval of the updated records management policy. The policy was last reviewed in 2015, and it's felt an updated version of the policy is needed to take into account key changes that have occurred during this time, such as use of hybrid working, the council's business classification system, which was introduced, and the use of new systems that are used across the council for storage of electronic records. The purpose of the policy is to assist services with meeting legislative requirements and to assist the council officers in carrying out their own functions and to serve as a key public asset. The policy itself covers the management of all records of the council, applies not only to council officers but also to elected members in any partner organisations with the council. The council sets out, the policy sets out, general objectives of record management, roles and responsibilities for those that handle and create records, and the general standards for all officers and how records should be created, handled, stored and destroyed. For awareness, the council does have a separate policy to this one, the council's retention and disposal policy, which gives individual guidance to officers on how individual records should be stored and destroyed in accordance with any kind of requirements they have. It's my understanding that this policy will be reviewed at a later date, but the item is to seek approval of the updated general objective standards for records management. I'm happy to take any comments on this.
Okay, thanks, Martin. Any questions for Martin on the policy? John?
Actually, thank you, Convener. First of all, I would like to thank everyone for this paper, and there is a couple of questions. I see that it is very, very wide-reaching, and as per section 4.1, it covers the management of all records in the council. It is applicable to council officers, elected members, volunteers, consultants, partner organisations. When I look at the record management policy, I notice that under 3, the policy refers to any records shared or received by other organisations or third parties should be managed in accordance with this policy. Now, if I was to search for Interplaid Council and other organisation or third party websites, for example, you could have the Planning and Environmental Appeals Division, that's the DPEA, the Scottish Assessors Association, or Public Contracts Scotland for information. I noticed that there seems to be a duplication between what the council has and what other organisations have. That's fine, I don't have any issues with that. But there are other websites I can go into and I can take it offline where I don't see any reference council-wise. I was just wondering where that is stored and where I could possibly get access to it. Going to take it offline. The second one really refers to the, again, referring to the records management policy, and under section 6, records management standards and responsibilities, in it, subsection 6, retention and disposal. It notes that the record identified as having historical significance as archived will be transferred to the council archivist, which I would assume will be in the Watt Institute. Now, I know that there are legal papers and representations. It's just to find out, would they be transferred to the archivist, or are they actually kept within Interplaid Council's other records? Thank you.
Okay, Martin, are you able to assist those?
Yes, thanks. Through you, Convener. I think on the councillor's first point, I'd be happy to deal with that offline if that's okay, so I can have a kind of further look into giving a meaningful answer on that point. In terms of the second question, in relation to records that are transferred to the council archivist or if they're kept within services, this area is overseen by the Information Governance Steering Group. So any kind of records management and how that's kind of carried out within services is carried in accordance with the policy. So there'll be some services that will have records that are once they've been complied with, they are then either destroyed or they are transferred. Some services will have their own arrangements for how they keep some of their records, but again, that's kind of dealt with between each individual service itself and in accordance with the policy, if that is helpful on that point.
Okay. Any other questions? Elizabeth?
Thanks, Convener. It's actually a meta point rather than an actual question. I'm looking at page 85 of big page 85, page 2 of the actual policy document, and I'm just going back to what we were talking about the HR systems and saying that we need to do a policy review, and I'm kind of going, this here is surely part of what should be our solution. This is a system that we use where we ask everybody who's developing policy documents and similar documents to do document control, and if this isn't working for us, then we need to enliven it and embed it in practice rather than it just being a page 2 of a policy that isn't currently working for us. It's just bearing on mind the grumbliness of my comments here there.
Yeah, no, thank you. Through you, Convener. Yeah, no, absolutely. And we're working on our initial things to just a review of the template policy, which would include this page, and we would bring that back to the committee at the same time as we do work around the register. But yeah, this should set out the current version where it's been when it was last approved, and we sort of go from there, and hopefully that helps the overall government.
Yes.
I mean, we regularly do get policies before us in this type of format. It's just that the policies we've got are not being reviewed as often as we should be with the
And through Convener, is the need a framework so that we capture all the policies of the council and so that we can ensure that they're regularly being reviewed. Each survey, in particular information governance and the support of Martin have been really good at making sure that we know what the policies are and how they're updated. But we need to make sure that's systematic all the way through. So Ian has been working on developing a kind of framework for them to have in vision.
Any other questions for Martin? No. Councillor Crowther, I think you need to speak to Martin pretty quickly because unfortunately Martin's going to be leaving us soon. So thank you for the contribution that you've made to the council every time you've been here, Martin, and to the committee. He is moving on to greater things with the big Death Star 20 miles up the road from Glasgow City Council. So we wish you well in your move on to Glasgow City Council. Good luck. Okay, right, colleagues, moving on to item 9, updating HSBT contracts. I think Kate's going to talk to that before. Can you hear us, Kate?
I'm here, sorry. I was just at the loo. If we could just take you forward, Craig's here too. So it's a paper that that we're just taking forward the carers quality component between and changing that from the 40 to the 60 to the 40 in terms of the carers tender. And the second phase of it is to look at, sorry, I'm having trouble with my eyes. Kay, could you help me out?
Yep, I'm happy to come in. Yep. The purpose of this, as Kate has said there, is to ask the committee to change the tender in terms of the weighting of the score 60-40 in terms of quality instead of the standard price, which normally gets 60%. And secondly, we're asking for the committee to note the current 12-month extension of the electronic monitoring care at home system under the current delegated authority. Obviously, we're happy to take any questions any member may have.
Okay, thank you. Any questions, colleagues?
Yes, please.
Yes, Lord.
Yeah, I don't know who I should address it to, but I'll start with Kate. Can you tell me, do you think this will assist us in recruiting carers? And secondly, do you have any thoughts on increasing the hourly wage of carers in the next few months? Thank you.
I think Councillor Wilson, this is not what this is about. This is about the carer centre that currently provides support to carers, not to people obviously who carers support. Right?
Okay.
So the care centre.
Then my question is relevant.
No, and in terms of the home care service, there has been a report recently went to the IGB, and there will be a report going to the next social work and social care scrutiny on that. So you'll be able to have your representative on that committee ask the question at that particular meeting. Unless Kate or Craig wants to add anything further to that. No? Okay.
No.
Any other questions? Colleagues? No? No. There you are. Another disappointing answer.
Thank you, convener. I'll try not to disappoint. I'm going to ask a tangential question here, so I do apologise.
Let me get the question first.
Thank you. Just with respect, well, parallel question maybe. Just with respect to the change to 6% cost, 40% quality to 6% quality, 40% cost, I'm just wondering whether or not other parts of the council would have are constantly reviewing that as well with respect to service delivery.
Yeah,
no, you can be. I mean, whenever any procurement exercise is undertaken, service areas with procurement, they'll always look at the cost quality ratio. And we have the default as a 60-40, which Katie and Craig have asked to be swapped over here. But I mean, it's pretty common. A lot of contracts, there'll be enough comfort in the statutory requirements and some of those other provisions. And I'd imagine a lot of other frameworks, Scotland Excel and the like that we call up, will be often a bit different as well. But yeah, that will always be reviewed.
And this isn't the first time I've looked at this. I still before this committee asking for a change like that, so it's not unusual. Okay, any other questions, colleagues? No, okay, committee recommendations.
Great.
Thank you. That takes us on to our final item, which falls under the section 18 decision as that item for noting shall not invite being presented. What our team will be happy to answer any questions on the report. Any questions from colleagues on the report, or any comments anybody wishes to make? Councillor Wilson's poised to let me see.
I'm poised to go.
That's what I mean, yeah. Okay, right, so we're happy to review the recommendation. Right, thank you very much for your attendance. Thank you.
Thanks, all.